All right, welcome back to the deep dive. You guys sent in this article about how to tell if she's just not into you. We're going to dive into that today. Dating, dating can be a bit tricky, you know. I mean, it'd be nice if we could all just read minds.
Right.
But maybe we can at least learn to read the signs.
Yeah. I think it's interesting how a lot of this comes back to communication. Or actually, miscommunication.
Okay, so let's jump right in. First sign, communication breakdown. The article talks about how communication's so important, and well, we know that, right? Like logically. But what I'm wondering is, how do you know if it's like a communication style thing or if it's something more?
Right. Well, the source gives some specific things to look for, right? Like maybe she takes like more than a day to answer any messages.
Oh.
Or if her replies are always super short,
Oh,
like
yeah.
you're pulling teeth to get a conversation.
Oh, those one-word answers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I dated this guy one time, and he would, at first, write these super long messages, really thoughtful. But then they got shorter and shorter and shorter. It was like watching a flower, like wilt,
That's a good analogy.
like in slow motion.
Yeah, that really shows what I mean. So
Yeah.
if you see that pattern, like she starts pulling away from talking to you, that could be, a sign.
So it's not like exactly how much she talks to you, but more like how that changes over time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, gotta be careful, right? Some people they're just bad texters.
Right.
Or maybe they just aren't as talkative, just naturally.
But I mean, don't you think, like, if someone's really interested, wouldn't they try to communicate in a way so, the other person feels good?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's, a really important thing. Like, you deserve to be with someone who is excited to talk to you, someone who, will answer. And if it feels like, all the time it's just you trying to get them to respond, well, maybe it's time to think about that.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. All this stuff about communication, it kind of leads into the next sign, which is flakiness.
Yeah.
Because, everyone cancels plans sometimes, right? Things
Yeah.
come up.
Yeah. Life happens.
But the article said that if it's like a pattern, if someone's constantly flaking,
Yeah.
that can be a red flag.
Right. It said, imagine if you plan this special date, you put a lot of effort in, and then, like, right before she
Right.
cancels.
That'd be the worst.
How'd you feel?
That would be so disappointing.
Yeah.
And if it kept happening, you'd start to feel like, I don't know, like your time doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Like they don't
Oh.
respect your time.
Right. So if someone keeps canceling and, like, they don't have a good reason, maybe you should think about how much you're putting into this.
So it's not about like freaking out if someone cancels once,
Yeah.
but like, is there a pattern?
Right. And, what are your boundaries? Like, how much of that are you okay with?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
You shouldn't, settle for just being like an option, right?
Right.
When you could be someone's priority.
Exactly.
Okay, so next sign. This one gets a little more, let's just say we're going to get up close and personal.
Uh-huh. Yeah. The article talks about physical touch.
Okay, but wouldn't it be, I don't know, like easier to just ask someone how they feel than to try and figure out like all these little signs?
Right. Well, some people are more comfortable, just coming out and saying it, but other people, they show it more through, how they touch you.
Yeah, I guess so.
But the point here is it's not about being, cushy.
Right.
It's about those little moments when, you just naturally touch.
Okay, so like what kind of touches are we talking about?
Those things that happen when you're with someone you like maybe your hands brush when you're walking, or, you lean in when you're talking.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe a hug that, lasts a little longer than usual.
Okay, yeah, I get that. But what about, like different cultures?
Right.
Or just, some people aren't as comfortable being touched.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You always got to think about the person, right?
Yeah.
Some cultures are just more, touchy-feely. And some people they don't like to be touched as much.
Yeah. So how do you know, what it means?
It's about the whole picture, right? Is she warm? Does she, like, seem happy to be around you? Does she start conversations?
Well-
Does she, try to spend time with you?
That's right. It's not just about one thing.
Exactly. You can't just, look at one little thing and decide.
All right, good point. Don't jump to conclusions.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about communication, flakiness, and get a little touchy-feely. What's next?
Well, sometimes, even if things seem okay, you might find yourself in a place you really don't want to be.
Oh, no. You're talking about the dreaded friend zone, right?
Exactly. And that's actually what the next sign is all about. So, welcome back to the deep dive. I've always thought it's funny how people talk about the friend zone.
Right, like you're stuck there forever.
But like there's no escape.
Right. But do you think it's possible for someone to, like, change their mind about you?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, yeah, it's possible, but you got to be real about it.
Yeah, I read is an article by a psychologist, I can't remember who, but they were saying sometimes you're in the friend zone because, like, the timing's off. Like, maybe she's just not ready for a relationship.
Yeah.
Or maybe you two just, like, don't click in that way.
Right. And I think that's, really important to keep in mind, right? Like it's not about you being, not good enough. Sometimes it's just circumstances.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh.
Okay, so what about if someone, like, keeps saying you're a good friend? Like, you're such a good friend. Or,
Yeah.
I feel so comfortable talking to you. Like, is that a sign?
If they keep saying stuff like that, yeah, it probably means, they just see you as a friend.
Right.
Which doesn't mean you can't, still be friends.
Right.
But you gotta be honest with yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, can you really be happy with just that?
And if you can't, then, well, maybe you gotta, create some space.
Yeah, I think that's smart, put yourself first.
That makes sense. It makes me think about that physical touch thing again. Like, the article said if there's not a lot of touching, it could mean she's not interested.
Mm-hmm.
But what if, like, it's just a cultural thing?
Yeah, good point.
Or personal thing?
Yeah. Some cultures are like, they just don't touch as much. And some people, they just aren't touchy people.
So how do you know, what it means?
You gotta, like we said before, look at the whole picture.
Uh-huh.
Does she seem, into it when you're together? Did she start talking to you?
Right.
Does she want to hang out?
Okay, so you're saying don't, like, overanalyze every little touch.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, so on to the next sign. And this one kind of hurts.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
The one where, like, she's talking about other guys all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's okay. You're trying to get to know her, but she's got her eye on someone else.
The article, it said that, that could be a sign she's not into you. And I think, yes, sometimes that's true.
Yeah.
But, it depends, right? Like, is she asking for advice about someone she's dating?
Uh-huh.
Or maybe she's just, like, getting over a bad breakup and needs to vent.
Okay, those are different.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, what if she's always talking about how amazing this other guy is? Or, like, dropping hints that she's, into someone else?
Yeah. Then it sounds like, maybe she's trying to tell you something.
Like what?
Maybe she's saying, hey, I don't see you that way. Or maybe, she's just playing games.
Either way,
Okay.
it's not a good feeling.
No, it's
Yeah.
not. It makes you wonder where you stand.
Yeah, exactly.
And that brings up, I think, a really important point. You deserve to be with someone who, who's excited about you, someone who gives you their full attention.
Right. Not someone you have to, like, compete for.
Exactly.
But, okay, realistically, how do you, like, deal with those feelings?
When you see her, paying attention to someone else.
Yeah, like the jealousy.
Everyone feels jealous sometimes, right?
Right.
It's normal. But it's important to, notice those feelings, but don't let them control you.
So, like, don't, like, try to get back at her or something.
Right. If you're feeling bad about what she's doing, try talking to her about it.
Like how?
Just say how you feel. Like, hey, I feel kind of weird when you talk about other guys, or it makes me wonder where I stand with you.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like you're blaming her.
Right. And maybe she'll, explain things, make you feel better.
Yeah.
And if she doesn't, well, then you know something, right?
Like what?
Like maybe she's not ready for a relationship, or, she doesn't care about your feelings.
And then, like, maybe it's time to move on.
Right. Sometimes you got to take care of yourself, even if it means leaving someone you care about.
That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That actually leads into something I wanted to talk about in the last part of this deep dive. It's not just about, figuring out if she's into you. It's also about, like, what do you bring to the table?
Right.
Like, how can you make good connections with yourself and with other people?
Exactly.
Okay, welcome back to the deep dive.
So we've talked about, like, all these signs, right? How to tell if she's not into you. But I don't know, it seems like we're kind of focusing on, like, what she's doing.
Right.
And maybe that's not the best way to think about it.
It's funny, we always try to figure out, like, what other people are thinking.
Right.
But really, the most important relationship, it's the one you have with yourself.
That's true. So we should talk about, like, self-love then.
Right.
Because, everyone says that, right? Self-love.
Yeah.
But What does that even mean? Like when you're dating? Well, self-love, it's like the foundation for any good relationship.
Okay.
It means, you recognize your own worth. Like you treat yourself how you would treat, your best friend.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, they struggle with that though.
Yeah.
Like, especially if they've been rejected,
Right.
you start to think like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, you start blaming yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
But you got to remember, rejection, it doesn't mean you're not a good person. It just means maybe you two weren't a good match.
Okay. So how do you like get better at self-love?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're feeling, kind of down.
Well, first you gotta know yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are your good qualities?
Right.
What do you value? What makes you special?
So instead of focusing on like the bad things, you think about the good things.
Exactly. And then you make choices that, that support those good things.
Okay.
Like maybe you set boundaries with people, or you do things you enjoy, or you just take time for yourself.
That reminds me of something we talked about before, like, recognizing those red flags and then like walking away.
Right.
To self-love, like help with that.
Oh, absolutely. When you love yourself, you don't let people treat you badly.
Right.
You don't settle. Your time is valuable. You're not going to waste it on someone who doesn't, who doesn't appreciate you.
So it's like self-love protects you.
Yeah, you could say that. It helps you make good choices, even if it's hard to walk away.
Yeah. And then I guess when you love yourself, you attract people who are good for you.
Yeah, people who are secure in themselves, people who can, give and receive love in a healthy way.
Wow, that's really good. So it's not about like chasing after love. It's about like becoming the kind of person who has love.
Exactly. And that leads to, another thing, putting yourself out there, being yourself.
They can be scary though, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you've, been hurt before.
Right. But if you're ready to, to start dating again, maybe start by doing things you love, like join a club or volunteer, or I don't know, take a class, anything that gets you, out there and meeting people.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because then it's not just about, finding a date. It's about doing things that, you enjoy.
Exactly. And a lot of times when you're not, looking for love, that's when it finds you.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, but what if you're kind of shy? Or you just don't have a lot of time to, join all these clubs and things?
Well, online dating can be good for that.
Oh, right.
You can, connect with people at your own speed.
Yeah. And there's so many like different websites and apps now, right?
Yeah, there's something for everyone. But, the important thing is pick one that, that fits what you're looking for.
Right.
And don't go into it feeling, desperate. Just be open and curious.
I think that's good advice for dating in general.
Yeah.
Like, don't put so much pressure on it. Just, go out there and have fun, meet people.
Exactly. And trust the process, Finding love, it's a journey. There's going to be ups and downs. But if you're true to yourself, if you love yourself and you put yourself out there, you'll find someone, someone who's right for you.
That's so true. It makes me think about, something we talked about before, intuition.
Right.
Like that gut feeling.
It's like your inner compass,
Yeah.
Tells you what feels right, what feels wrong.
But sometimes it's hard to tell the difference,
Mhm.
right? Like between your gut and, just being scared.
Yeah. I think it comes down to how it feels. Intuition, it feels, expansive, like it's guiding you. Fear, it feels like tight, like it's holding you back.
So if you're like interested in someone, but you're also like hesitant, maybe you should like stop and think about it.
Yeah. Ask yourself, is this, am I really into this person, or am I just like trying to fill a void?
That's a good question. Wow, we've talked about a lot today. We talked about those, signs if she's not into you. We talked about self-love
Yeah.
and, trusting your gut. Any last words of advice?
Just remember, you deserve love. Don't be afraid to, to put yourself out there, be vulnerable, and trust yourself. Don't ever settle for less than you deserve.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for being here and diving deep with us. And to all of you listening, we hope you learned something today. And remember, keep diving deep, trust your heart, and never stop believing in love.